Hello and welcome to another edition of the Canadian Premier League Newsroom podcast. I'm Kristian Jack, joined today by Marty Thompson and Charlie O'Connor Clarke. Other work conflicts and school schedules mean it's just us three today, but we'll carry the load and we'll be fine for it. Quick fire question to start off, boys, as we get into what was a great weekend in the Canadian Premier League. Manny Aparicio was our player of the week, voted on Friday, but who would be your second player? Who else was considered for that after a good week of individual players? Marty?
Yeah, I picked Manny, but it might be Stefan Karjovanovic for Halifax. He drew the two penalties in the Labor Day game, and he scored against Forge on Friday. He actually drew a penalty again against Ottawa, the one that Morelli didn't finish. I was thinking him, just because I thought it was kind of a fun pick.
Good shout. Charlie?
I know they only played one game, but I gave very serious consideration to Azriel Gonzalez in Edmonton.
Yes, that's my pick. That was my pick too. We only played one game, but he does make the Gatorade Team of the Week this week after a goal and 2 assists. And he has certainly changed their attack a little bit. They've been fun to watch. All right, boys, let's start with Super Saturday in the Canadian Premier League. A dream day for those of us who like playoff races and chaos. Valor began the week with a 3-0 loss to Edmonton. We just mentioned that at home, and have since seen teams fail to capitalize multiple times during this bad run to catch up with them. But that finally ended and caught up with them on Saturday in the same afternoon, as Halifax beat Atlético Ottawa by 2-1 thanks to a late goal by you-know-who, Joao Morelli, and a York win at Forge by 2-0, closing the gap on fourth and the final playoff spot. We'll talk later about Pacific 3 Cavalry 1 at the top. Standings so far through 17 match days in the Canadian Premier League are Pacific, top of the table on 34 points from 17, an average of exactly 2 points per game. Cavalry 3 points back on 31. Forge third on 28. They are away from the pack and running into the playoffs. But Valor are fourth on 22. York fifth on 22, just behind on goal difference. Halifax sixth on 21. That's right. 1 point separates fourth to sixth, trailing Edmonton on seventh and 17. And Ottawa are losing pace, 13 points through 17 games. Boys, let's start in the nation's capital. What a game this was. Ottawa, again, very much heavily involved. Ottawa, again, giving up a penalty. Halifax, again, having late goals. Joao Morelli is our main man we have to talk about here. He did not play against Forge because he was suspended, but in the last 3 games he's played, he has a brace in all 3. 6 goals in 3 games. A remarkable pace, and this was probably one of my favorite goals he scored, Charlie. Just off the boot, left foot strike, instant as he ran into the box into his office, and a great finish and a much-needed 3 points for Halifax.
Yeah, a huge result for Halifax, and we probably need to start talking about Joao Morelli as a real candidate for this year's MVP, because he's been incredible for this Halifax team. At certain early stages of the season, he was the only player that could score for them. And, they're picking it up in other areas now, but he still remains that huge force. In this Ottawa game, he played a slightly different role. He played as a number 10. So he was kind of that late arriving runner in the box, which produced that second goal when he's kind of at the top of it unmarked because Corey Bent is causing chaos down in the 6-yard box, and he scores the goal as he always seems to. But he was actually kind of the creative force on this day as well, with I think 3 key passes and a whole lot of attacks ending in the attacking third. But yeah, Joao Morelli, man, he's a very, very talented player, and he's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, interesting that he got to play in that number 10. Stephen Hart said a lot this season that they played him basically where they've had to play him because of the injuries that they've had. Played quite deep a lot, but we know, and I covered it on One Soccer as well, we know he's at his best when he's really making those penetrating runs into the box and into space, and a lot of his goals has been those one-touch finishes, not just penalties, by the way, 4 of them as well from his 11 so far, Marty, but just a difference maker to see him playing and flourish in that number 10 spot. And really carry this Halifax team to, as I said earlier, to a 3 points that they desperately needed, having left so many on the table from winning positions over the last few weeks.
We're going to talk a lot about this Halifax team, but again, Morelli playing in those positions. Like Akeem Garcia scored 1 goal this year? And Morelli's off a penalty, and Morelli's coming into that role. It just shows that, Halifax does have a lot of attacking firepower outside of Morelli, but specifically to him, I did look it up today, guys. Now Morelli leads with 6 braces in the CPL's history. He obviously surpassed Dom Malonga on 4 in the past week. He also has 6 penalties, 6 converted all time, which I think is also a CPL record. But keep in mind, he only had 2 as of like 2 weeks ago. So he's setting records everywhere with this goal scoring streak for sure.
He's been excellent, and we'll get to Ottawa in a second. I felt for him in a way, but here we go. Here come Halifax. Yeah. They've been many people's pick to be the team that could be the one that would come from deep to kind of make a run. Unbeaten in 6, 13 points post-bubble, have scored in 9 straight games as well. They seemingly are clicking. That back three, and they've had a lot of injuries, but that back three, Charlie, seems to be working for them as well. And there's no continuity. They keep getting injuries and different players in there, but in the end, they drew games when they could have lost them, and now they're starting to win games when they could have drawn them. And this is becoming a bit of a crucial time for some momentum.
Yeah, and that's really the huge part, because I think we did say they're unbeaten in, is it 5 or 6 now?
6, yeah.
6. But I think 4 of those are draws. But I think they've now won 2 of their last 3, because they are really, starting to turn these results into wins, as you said. And that's kind of what they've been talking about in the last couple of weeks, is they've just got to, find that last little edge to put teams away. And even on the road, it's difficult to do that. And Ottawa has been a fairly difficult team to play against at TD Place in their few games there so far. But it's really positive for Ottawa. And, you mentioned that back three. And Peter Shaw is always incredible when he gets on the pitch for them. I think maybe lost in the shuffle of Joao Morelli's big day was how good Jake Ruby was in that game. Mm-hmm. He had a whole lot of tackles, and I think he won, every duel he was in. He is really, really flourishing in that spot, in that kind of right side of a back three. We know other players that do very well in the right side of a back three for the national team.
Right.
But yeah, it's always a fun position for players to play, and Ruby is really making it his own. He's always been a really good player at, winning those battles and winning the ball off players, and he is really thriving there.
Yeah, Jake Ruby, one player, was one of a few players this week that I just couldn't get in the team of the week, and it was so tough. But Kristian Jack had a great game as well, and ended up getting that extra spot for me in defense. They scored 4 goals, Halifax, in 8 games in the bubble. Since then, I think it's got 14 in 9. So that attack's clicking. And as you mentioned, Marty, as well, they're not getting their main man scoring goals, so that certainly helped them as well. But the game did actually make a big difference in terms of Ottawa again contributing to their own downfall. Another foul in the box. Yeah. That's 9, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that 9 penalties now they've conceded this season? Yeah. And far too many in a row. I think I'll check the stats in a second. But to do that so early, if you're Mista, Marty, and you're working on this all week, and then within 5 minutes you give away another penalty in the box, who'd be a manager in this situation for them?
Well, he said previously that he hasn't seen, and this was when they were on 6 or 7 penalties, that he had never seen any streak like this. Right. And it's continuing. We saw Jimmy Brennan with York with the same thing in that game on Labor Day last week, where he focused on that, and they gave up 2 penalties in rapid succession as well. I think for Ottawa, it's just about trying to, as Mista's mentioned countless times, just having confidence in the box and, making those mistakes, but trying to learn from them. We've seen a couple younger players, give up penalties here recently. And I mean, it's hard not to it just sucks. We've seen it with Pacific last year, right? The number of penalties that they gave up and how it changed their season. This is changing Ottawa's season. There's no doubt about it.
6 penalties conceded in their last 8 games.
Yeah.
2 points from a 4-game home span, 1 win in 12. They got 7 points from 8 in the bubble, where things were kind of mediocre. They kind of came out there going, I think we kind of thought they underachieved, particularly after a preseason where they went away and got a lot of cohesion together that other clubs didn't have. If they underachieved in the bubble with 7 points from 8, what kind of word are we describing them now? 6 points from 9 post-bubble, and they played 6 of those games at home. Underachieving is certainly one way to describe it, Charlie, but I feel like maybe a little bit stronger. This is just a team that is just, at times, playing really well in games, and then at times, as Mr. has said, maybe don't react really well to adversity, and then just spiral out of control. It's a difficult team to analyze because, as I said, so they've had moments in games where they fought back, and I thought Malcolm Shaw was great again on the weekend, but just a disappointing team that can't get over the line a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think maybe the word exasperating is what I would go with for this team, because it is sort of the same story every game. Every opposing team that they come up against is full of praise for this team and how well they move the ball, and how good they are at playing the ball out of the back and playing in possession. But every single time it's a silly penalty, it's a bad giveaway, and then the game kind of spirals away from them. Mista, in his post-match availability after this one, was with that same kind of attitude. I mean, we mentioned that it did seem like the same story, and he just started laughing like Jack Nicholson. It's like clearly a man who's very frustrated with what's going on here, because he said, I don't know what else we can do, because we're like, I don't know what to say to this team, because we are doing things right. It's just the ball's not going in for us, and it is going in at the back because we're kind of causing our own downfall at a lot of opportunities. So it is really frustrating to maybe pick out exactly what they could change other than, not fouling guys in the box. But yeah. I don't know, something's got to give soon.
I still think there are...
No, I mean, and the other thing, sorry, Marty, go ahead. The other thing quickly is that, like, you can't question these decisions. Like, they've all been, I don't think there's been really one where you go, I mean, they're pretty much penalties. Go ahead, Marty. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say there are some, and correct me if I'm wrong here, guys. Like, I think there are some positives for this Ottawa team, considering how they started this season. Yeah. Like, think about how static their attack looked in those opening games. Yeah, they won against Edmonton on the first day of the season, but all things considered, like, Malcolm Shaw, you mentioned there, KJ, like he's got 7 goals or something like that. Like he continues, in the finish that he had on the weekend, like, I think that they are still kind of growing into it. And I think with a new team like this, how 2020 went, like, I think they just need a bit of time. And I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. I think there are some positives there.
No, I think so. Look, I think, they
they're growing, right?
They have to grow, though. No, like, it can't be a season now where it spirals out of control and they just say, okay, we're not going to make it and we're going to try and figure out next. We have to see, if you're Ottawa ownership and you're running the team, you have to think, all right, well, if we're not going to make the playoffs, who's going to make it for next year, right? Who's going to be the core we build around? Because what's the key in this league? Look at Pacific, Cavalry, Forge, stability, right? They've been building for this moment for a while, Charlie. And if you're Ottawa, you have to say, we need a core group here to be able to push forward, because, it's the first real season. We get it. There's some changes last year. I think they only had 9 returnees, so they've gone through a whole thing again. You know what I mean? So, but this year they can't be just blowing it up again for 2023, 2022.
Absolutely. Yeah. And maybe in hindsight, Ottawa does get a bit of a pass at times for, they are quite a different team to what they even were last year. And obviously last year's team was put together quite quickly because of the situation and, how late they came into the league. And it is a process of building things. And I think that maybe the 2 teams in a league that are in this sort of building phase are Ottawa and FC Edmonton, who keep speaking about the same sorts of things, right? They're building things. They need to see players, individuals step up and really fight to, earn their spot in this team, right? Because as you said, you're not just playing for this season anymore. At this point, you are playing for next year. And we don't know which players are out of contract. We don't know which players are looking to move up or to stick around with this team. And at this point, you do need to see, a fight. You need to see players, even if it is a difficult season and even if it does seem like things just aren't going well, you need to see players that are sticking to this vision that they're trying to instill and really continuing to, as difficult as it is, continuing to buy into what this team is trying to put together.
Yeah, 100%. Trips to York Lions Stadium on the docket for both these teams. Ottawa go to York Tuesday night. Halifax go to York on Saturday as the come-on game with match of the week. What a match that will be. We'll get into that a little bit later. Talking of York, Forge 0, York United 2. An action-packed match again from Tim Hortons Stadium. What a game this was in terms of York going into Hamilton and just not getting
having a bit of fun.
Yeah. What I struck about this was I did this game on One Soccer. I was at the other game when they won the game, and you guys remember this. They won 1-0. Rivero got a goal, and it was sent off. And Forge just destroyed them in the last 30 minutes, pushing, but just couldn't score. And in the end, I think everyone at York said, okay, maybe got away with one there. We'll take the 3 points. They didn't get away with anything here. They went out, they stomped it, they got what they needed. And they got a penalty missed as well. And they delivered a tremendous, particularly second half performance, Marty, that makes us think this is a real contender for a top 4 spot, York United.
this is such a hardworking, selfless team. They really play like they play as a unit in a way that a few teams, I think at this point, especially outside of the top 3 or 4 teams in this league, really show on a week-to-week basis. They keep showing that they're willing to fight. Obviously, after the game against Halifax, how demoralizing that could have been. They come out here and they just absolutely destroy it. I know you want to talk about Max Ferrari. That's a player that, you just follow him around for 45 minutes. It's tireless. It's endless. These are players that are just like, they really are working tight knit. They're working like a good group. I think that's really what is going to be, their X factor if they want to make the playoffs at this point. And they showed it against Forge.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, what was coming in, and we spoke to Charlie and I spoke to Jimmy Brennan last week in the press conference about it. They came into the game having given up 8 points from winning positions in the last 5 matches. Mm-hmm. 4 of those they led and didn't win, So when they went up in this game, I don't know about you guys watching the game, we certainly at One Soccer thought, okay, let's find out a little bit now about this team, right? Against the champs, ahead 1-0. No. Let's go again. There was Jonathan Grant would admit his left-footed ball into the box is pretty much not a great ball. But then on the counter-attack, York pushed forward, get that key second goal, which was very important because we knew that the onslaught from Forge, particularly when Babuli came on, would happen. Yeah. But it all started, Charlie, with Ferrari. Another goal. Sure did. One that he said that he would take. I don't know how he worded it, but he basically told us he didn't necessarily mean the shot, but he kind of put it over that it went in. Kind of meant it, kind of didn't. Yeah. I want to concentrate on just him as a player. This is a player that is not only just a contender for the Young Canadian Player of the Year, but a player that would be in consideration for being, a top 5, top 10 candidate for the league MVP at this point, how well he's playing, Charlie. And, we'll get to some of the other under 21 Canadians who are pushing him at the moment, but back-to-back weeks again in the Gatorade Team of the Week, and a player that just drives this team forward, no pun intended.
I love that a lot.
There it is. Well, everybody gets one.
Everybody gets one. Yeah. I think it was Marty just
by Ferrari.
There we go. Well, I think it was Marty that just said that this York team is selfless and hardworking, and that's exactly what Max Ferrari is specifically. Yeah. Right? And it maybe speaks to how much of this team, maybe identity, feels like it's coming through him. And he's a 20-year-old player, and he's just come in and made such an impact so quickly. And I think, KJ, you mentioned that pre-match conference with Jimmy Brennan on Friday, and he spoke a lot about Max Ferrari, and I think he just couldn't say enough about how hardworking this kid is. I think he said that he had to sit him out of training for a bit because his biometric meter was kind of going out of control, and he's like, you have to take a break, man. You have to chill out, because he just works so hard all the time. And he's just a fascinating player to watch because he's just so quickly on the ball, and when he gets it in space, he's gone. And it's a really, really fitting name that he has, because he is just so devastating on that counterattack. He's so fast, and his chemistry that he's starting to build up with some of these other players. This York counterattack is terrifying. It's really, really good. And as a team that is quite good at defending and sitting in a low block, if you mess up against them, if you give the ball away, you're going to be destroyed on that counterattack. And it's more often than not going to come through Ferrari, who's just a ridiculously entertaining player at the moment.
Yeah. So if Max needs like a bit of time off, does he go to the shop? Does he need a new transmission or something? Like, what's the? All I'm
going to say is I'm going to watch York live on Tuesday night. I want to see Max Ferrari. So if anyone's listening, I imagine he's going to get rested soon. Please don't rest him on Tuesday night. I don't want to get there and Max Ferrari's a sub. So that's my message to York. That I haven't run the numbers on this, and I'm sure our friends can do this. But you mentioned their counterattack. When I watch them, they rarely play lateral passes. It's forward. Yeah. You think of all their players, Ansah, Abzi. I thought Zator was tremendous again. But, Johnston played a little bit higher. I thought it was a really, really good decision to play 3 central midfielders with Toussaint and Verhoeven and Johnston, just to kind of boost up that midfield. Whenever you play against Cisse or Becker, you've got to outnumber them and outwork them, and it's tough. I thought Cisse was tremendous again. But they play forward and quick, and that's what's caught Forge out a little bit here. I mentioned it, Ferrari, the leading candidate, no question about it right now for the young player, under 21 Player of the Year. what other players are in that discussion, boys? Because we were talking a little bit about this off camera as well at One Soccer, challenging him right now. I don't want to say all of them, but Karifa Yao is a player I was thinking about. Did you guys ever have a thought about anybody else who could be challenging Max Ferrari for that individual honor?
It's tough just because I think Jonathan Sirois is the other one, but his season necessarily hasn't gone the way we expected it would have in July. He has been good. Yeah, he has been good. But I think, those three are definitely up there. Like Isaiah Johnson as well. He could still count for this, right? I would put him there. Yeah. Charlie, do you have any names?
Yeah, Marty took all the picks that I think we've spoken about before.
What about a certain defensive midfielder for Pacific?
Certain defensive midfielder for Pacific, just Hajaberpour?
Yeah.
He's been good. I think we kind of forget that he's still that young because it's his third season with the team.
Yeah.
He is really excellent, especially, with some injuries. He always seems to be a consistent force. But, the fact that we're maybe just throwing out a whole lot of names for the sake of throwing out names, I think it speaks volumes to, Ferrari's running away with this award, I think.
That's kind of why I did it. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah. Valor have now been caught, so the next few matches will be critical to decide how the end of the season table shapes up with the top 4 teams making the playoffs. Quote, that's what we've been chasing. We knew we needed 3 points, said Max Ferrari. Quote, we saw that we were on 19 and could get level with Valor on 22 with a win today. We thought we were unlucky with our past couple of results, and to get a win after 5 games without one is huge for us. And that's how they played.
Yeah.
They played like a team looking at the table. Didi Nabzian, if you saw it, we had him at halftime, and he said, we are going to win this match. It was 0-0 against the champs, and he said, we are going to win this match. And I just love that, as you said, that youthful enthusiasm about this team. And they don't fear Forge. And by the way, they could end up playing them in a playoff game. Yeah, we don't know that, but they don't fear them at all, right? What about Forge here? Any concerns? A big month ahead. My friend and colleague Gareth Wheeler was pretty good to say this could be a look-ahead game as he thought about going into that game on the weekend. I don't necessarily want to say that that's why they lost, but with bigger games to come, Canadian Championship, CONCACAF League, Forge already kind of settled in the 3. Their lineup certainly didn't dictate it. But this was not a performance that Bobby Smirniotis would have been happy with, Matty.
Yeah, certainly not. I think it was a frustrating one. But at the end of the day, Smirniotis specifically knows what this team is about, and it's about trying to obviously get in the top 4 for the playoffs and be successful in CONCACAF League. We've seen this team have lulls, around CONCACAF League games before in the first season as well. But I don't think, Forge played okay in that game. Paulo Sabac almost scored goal of the season with that lefty where he seemed to have like 5 or 6 players around him at once, and he somehow fired that one off. Like Babuli obviously had that shot up, went off like Chris Ensa's skull. Like there were many chances in this game. I don't know. It is frustrating, but at the same time, Forge understands what the slog of the season is, and they are in good shape. They are in good
16
shape.
shots.
Exactly. I don't really think it's anything to be concerned about at all. That and even the Halifax loss as well. I think they're in good shape.
I'll take your stats and your analysis, and I'll kind of agree with it. I'll counter with this. I do think the difference with them over Pacific and Cavalry is they're not efficient enough. And I do think they have something lacking in the final third, whether that be Omar Brownie, who's on his way apparently. Bobby Smirniotis asks every morning over his cornflakes when the paperwork has been signed. Whether that be now Babuli coming back, whether that being a Tristan Borges that we still haven't seen in Top Gear yet, we need to see it eventually, right? If they're going to win a league, we need to see that eventually. And I'll say this. The other thing I'll say is I understand that Palmer Carr, Tommy Wheeldon has been the head of this, and Bobby Smirniotis are all saying the same things, right? Make the top 4. Just get in the top 4. We'll see. I'm going to make a case. You want to win this league. You need to win this league. Why? First of all, the top 3 are running away with it compared to everybody else. Would you like a semi-final to play at home against the team that finishes 4th and then play at home in the final? Or would you like to play one of Cavalry or Forge or Pacific away from home in the first game and then play them away from home again? Yeah. Because if you finish 3rd, you got to go away from home to get 2 top teams to try and win this. That is a slog. So I know what everyone's saying. It's 17 games in. It feels like, okay, September. when we start kicking into the later September and October, this is going to be the storyline, in my opinion, the race for number one and the key advantage that you're going to have over it. And I think the storyline, Charlie, will change. I think they're going to start saying as the games come thick and fast, that number one all of a sudden is extremely important, to not have to travel, not to play away from home against these teams. And also, they're not going to say this, but to play a team that finishes fourth that are significantly less qualified.
Yes. And as much praise as we have heaped on York, or whether it's Valor or Halifax or Edmonton, they are, at probably a level below those top three teams at the moment. But I think even more than that, you're absolutely right. The home advantage would be huge in these playoff games, because we know how hard it's been traditionally to play on the road in the CPL, with the travel and the short turnaround and going on the road to these tough environments. It is going to be massive. And I think probably these three teams at the top will frame it as, we've gotten through to the season to this point. We've put ourselves in a position to fight for that positioning, to fight for that top spot. Yeah. And that's probably all you can ask for now. And maybe as we see them get really down the wire, maybe the last 10 game sprint to the playoffs, we'll see teams really start to maybe kick into gear with these races for the positioning, because I think it is absolutely going to be on their minds. And if it's not yet, it will be very shortly.
Yeah, I think so. Keep an eye on that. Talking at the top of the table clash, we go back to Thursday, Pacific 3, Cavalry 1. Tommy Wheeldon Jr. was magnanimous in defeat, saying we were the best. The best team won, and was not very happy, in particular, in conceding the goal right before halftime. Was leading the game 1-0. I think Sergio Camargo called it shocking and had to go at the fact that their game management was nowhere near good enough at that level. But it has to be said, the Pacific attack is dynamic at the moment. They are efficient where other teams have not. 3 more goals. Their goal difference is off the charts, way better than anybody else in the league right now. I think they're at plus 12 right now, 30 goals through 17 games. Another game where they got 3 goals. They've done it consistently, again, without Bustos. Terran Campbell stepped in. I thought I didn't get him in the team of the week, but I thought Alejandro Diaz was fantastic in holding the ball up. Wiro Diaz was tremendous in the game. Hurd came off after 60 minutes and they put Blasco on. There's so much depth there, Marty, at the moment. This is a team that you picked at the start to lead it all the way. And so far through 17 games, we're patting you on the back, mate. But even you, I would imagine, when you picked them to be the best team, would not have thought that this attack would be quite as dynamic without Bustos.
The attack for sure. But again, this is another game where they completely stifled the opposing team's attack.
Right.
And the defensive group, I know we talked about this before the season started. It's with Pacific. Like, you never quite knew, right? They had lost obviously Marcel de Jong. They were weak back there, but again, Lucas McNaughton has been fantastic this season. And then going back up, like you mentioned, Terran Campbell, he's might be so far through, at least to the middle part of the season, out of the bubble, their most valuable player. I think he's got 6 goals and 4 assists or something. It's mad. I really think this team is a cut above, and I'm glad I picked them before the season. And it's good that they are coming up against Cavalry the way they are. You kind of touched on it there, KJ, with wanting to play the good teams. And Tommy had a great quote before the game talking about iron sharpening iron, right? And Pacific gets a chance to play Cavalry and vice versa. I think they're going to do 2 more times, but they do get the chance to play a lot. And, there are learning lessons that come out of it. And frankly, Pacific has gotten the best out of this. Even though they did lose that one game at home, they're still getting the best out of this. And we still have another Canadian Championship game to look forward to. So yeah, I think Pacific on the whole as it continues to prove that they are that consistent team.
Such a great rivalry developing here. The 2 top teams in the league playing a lot, and sometimes familiarity can lead to contempt. Not had a lot of too much issues with that right now. I think there's still a tremendous amount of respect with each other. But, I'll say this: whoever plays, and if they do play each other in the playoffs, flip a coin. Pacific had their say this time. I think Cavalry could have their say next time. Charlie, it's just I will say I think Pacific have had a light schedule they've only played 5 games. I know they played the CanChamp game against the Whitecaps, but considering how condensed this schedule is about to become and how it was before, I think this has helped them a little bit because they can reach a tempo right now, an explosion in the attack, particularly. They've got fresh players. Terran Campbell's an example of that, where they haven't had to rotate too much. And I think that's helped them playing just 5 league games in under a month.
Yeah, I think it has. They've managed to have this little bit of consistency. And when you want to play the kind of attacking football they do, it's really helpful to have the same kind of players on the pitch. Josh Hurd is really, really embracing that role on the left. Diaz is, become the out and out number 9 because of how good Terran Campbell's been on the right.
Yeah.
And this is, as they continue to get healthier as well, they're only going to get better. Ollie Bassett made a return in this game. I think he's been out for a little while. Mm-hmm. He was great. I mean, they've still got even Victor Blasco again, who's just coming off the bench at the moment. We talk about their defense, and they've been so good defensively even without Thomas Mayer-Jaguar, who was one of the best center backs in the league last year, and is an incredibly talented young player. So this Pacific team really does have an insane amount of depth that they actually haven't had to, lean on in the way that some other teams have in the past month or so, because they have been able to keep things fairly consistent. But when they have had to call on it, it's really, made a difference for them to keep some of these players a little bit fresher.
Yeah, and still no Bustos, right? Like we still wait for his
Don't need him. Forget about it. Don't even come back. All good. I'm just kidding. They will be lethal with him back.
I think he's watching Joao Morelli dying to get back on the pitch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we all know Marco. He'll be freaking out. Absolutely.
He wants to get back on the talking about having games a little bit of a rest. It doesn't get much easier. Pacific this week, lots going on. Go to Edmonton on Tuesday night and then host Ottawa on Sunday before the CanChamp game in midweek, again following that, where they play Cavalry play Pacific in the Canadian Championship game. So 6 big games this week. Tuesday night, York against Ottawa and Edmonton against Pacific. Wednesday night, the Canadian Championship game. Marty will be there for us. Forge against Valor from Tim Hortons Field. York United against Halifax Wanderers from York Lions Stadium on Saturday is the come-on match of the week. Catch it live with us on One Soccer. Charlie will be covering it for us as well. We get to that quickly in a second. Valor Cavalry will follow that in the afternoon. And then on Sunday night, Pacific Ottawa, we'll be back Sunday night to recap all of that as well. I think out of all those games, and of course there's a CanChamp game there as well, but York, what a week they've got ahead of themselves, right?
Yep.
York against Ottawa on Tuesday, which anybody associated with York will be telling themselves, guys, do not take this team lightly. This looks like a game we should win, but the kind of game that in Canadian Premier League this year have taught us that you don't win when you're supposed to win those games. And then just a massive game against a rested Halifax on Saturday who don't play this week. So this is the team to watch, the trending team right now in the Canadian Premier League this week, Charlie, at York Lions Stadium. 2 massive games for Jimmy Brendan's side.
Absolutely. And I think Valor only plays 1 game on the weekend. So, if York is able to pull out a couple results, then they may wake up next week and see themselves in a playoff spot.
Yeah, and that's what we said, right? York get to play teams like Ottawa, and no disrespect, Halifax. Valor are playing Cavalry and Pacific a lot, and they're the 2 best teams in the league right now, Marty.
That's the first element. The second element is taking advantage of that, right? This is a York team that's also dropped points away to Ottawa. And, when they're playing teams like you mentioned, Halifax, I think they play they play obviously on the weekend, then they play again. So those are like incredibly important points, because if you're going to say we're playing weaker opposition in the East, well, you need to take advantage of it. Obviously, York beating Forge twice does that too, but you really do need to capitalize on that advantage.
Just a big week in the Canadian Premier League, and a reminder, CanPL.ca/predictor. Go on, pick the scores, pick the results, pick the winners, and you can win tickets to the final that's coming thick and fast in November. After that, what a week we have the following week. We got Forge against Independiente in the CONCACAF League. We have a triple header of Canadian Championship on the 22nd. We'll be all over that, previewing that next week. All right, boys, before we let you go, any other business? What's on your mind this week? Anything non-football related that's got your juices flowing? Anything exciting out there, Marty?
I'm looking for apartments in Toronto right now, which is not a good time. Not a good time. I wouldn't recommend that for anybody.
No, it's probably like one of the most challenging times of someone's life, right? Moving.
Yeah.
Like The moving anyway is challenging. It's it's one of those moments in your life where it's like everyone hates it moving, right? But then actually planning to move, I think, is almost as bad as actually moving. And
then you're like, we found a really nice place, and then a buddy called this morning, said no dice, don't even bother coming around. I was like, thanks. There's a lot of that. That's all right. We'll get through it. Maybe we'll get through it.
Anybody Charlie, listening with apartments in Toronto, you can message Marty.
Give Marty a call.
Yeah, I'm moving in. Just my girlfriend and cat. That's it. But I'm moving in.
See, they're not even that. They don't even have that much stuff. Just a cat. Come on, let him in.
Yeah, it's just a cat. It's not a big deal. Yeah.
It's not like a big, 150-pound dog or anything.
No,
that's true. Yeah.
I've met this cat. It's it's a bit of a terror sometimes, but
we're trying to sell Marty on getting an apartment here.
Yeah, you know what? We did record a couple episodes with my cat when he was a kitten, and it was a nightmare.
What's the cat's name?
His name's Magoo. And he acts exactly like you would expect he would.
All right.
Yeah, so that's tough. Yeah, so hopefully no potential landlords read or listen to this or
I was trying to sell at you, but now you've made out this cat from hell.
I can't in good conscience. I can't in good conscience let that go unmentioned.
Real talk though, Charlie. If you see a sign in your neighborhood, just let me know immediately, because I feel like that's how you get an apartment in Toronto. You just see a sign, you call it, and you're like, oh, this is $400 cheaper than the going rate. Yeah. Perfect.
But now they're going to say no cats.
They are going to say no cats.
So quickly, if the apartment of your dreams came up and they said no cats, what's going on with Magoo? Is you getting another apartment, or are you just letting him go?
We've literally had that happen already. Someone asked, "Oh, can you tell me about yourself?" I mentioned that we had a cat, and then just no response. And then I said, "Hey, are we still on for 4 p.m.?" And they're like, "No, because you have a cat." So that's going to keep happening. That's going to keep happening.
There you
Don't
go.
worry about it.
Charlie, what's going on in your life?
The CPL is going on. Can I shout out the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yes.
That's been a lot of fun the last few days.
Just putting up NFL scores on an NFL Sunday, by the way.
Yeah. Just unbelievable.
Pounding this single A Baltimore Orioles team.
That was so much fun. Those comebacks and a doubleheader on Saturday as well. It's a good time. It's a good time for sports.
Baseball's fun, man. I mean, I'm a Braves fan. We're top of the division, so we're hoping to get the playoffs as well. But baseball this time of year is fun. The leaves are changing. The weather's changing a little bit. October playoff baseball, bring it up. I'm all over that. Anytime I want to talk about baseball. Also this week, September, I don't know if you guys are F1 fans or anything, but September 15th, Schumacher documentary coming out on Netflix.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Can't wait for this.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Looking forward to that. They know how to do some documentaries on F1, so this should be pretty special.
Oh, yeah.
And I was quite fortunate to see quite a lot of Schumacher's big moments as a kid. So I was there for his first win. I was there for his first race, both back-to-back games, races at Spa 91, 92. Actually, I've got Schumacher on my desk here. Schumacher right here. There he is.
Oh, nice.
There's Michael.
He looks like Superman.
Yeah, that was his famous celebration. Benetton colors, 95. So yeah, looking forward to that. I don't get a chance to watch much Netflix these days because CPL is busy, but looking forward to that, boys.
Nice.
All right. Well, keep up the great work, fellas. Thanks everybody for listening as usual. A big week, as I said, 6 games this week, 1 in the Canadian Championship, 5 in the Canadian Premier League. We'll be all over that. CanPL.ca. We thank you for watching with us and listening to us, and we'll speak to you soon. Have a good week.